My dog eats his poop or other excrement. What should I do? Why does my dog eat his poo or eat the excrement, droppings, of other animals, dogs, cats? Does this coprophagia disgust you or worry you because you fear that he is sick? We will try to understand, in this article, the reasons that lead your dog to eat his poop or that of other animals and try to offer easily applicable solutions. Dog eating its droppings, normal or not? Observing dogs eating feces is quite common and particularly repulsive to owners. To say if this coprophagia of the dog is normal or not, it is necessary to be interested in the situation in which it occurs. In a completely normal way, we see this type of act, called coprophagy, in the bitch who has given birth and who, during the first 3 weeks of life of her puppies, licks their posterior and absorbs their stools and urine. The reason for this behavior is simple. In fact, the development of puppies is not complete at birth. They are unable to control their sphincters and it is the licking of the mother that leads to the elimination of excrement. Nice dedication, isn't it? Also normal, the coprophagia of the puppy which begins to explore its environment around 3 to 4 weeks of life will start to swallow droppings. For him it's first and foremost a curious game which, like a child, leads him to touch everything and put everything in his mouth. We also evoke a possible behavior linked to the observation of the mother and therefore to an ingestion of excrement by imitation, but, in all cases and without the owner worrying about it, the coprophagia of the puppy must disappear on its own and not should only be occasional in adulthood. Among these adults, and also occasionally, the ingestion of feces from large herbivores, cow dung, horse dung, etc., is considered. This can be explained by the appetence of these excrements which opens the appetite of our charming companions, but we can also consider an instinctive behavior because the dogs, in the wild state and as good carnivores that they are, hunted, between others, herbivores whose intestines they devoured. When is coprophagia in dogs abnormal? In fact, the rest of the time, if the behavior is repetitive, a dog that eats its poop or the feces of another dog is not normal. An exception all the same, but in this case the coprophagia will remain occasional. It is the dog which eats the stools of another dog in which there remain food residues. You will understand why in the following paragraph devoted to the possible causes of abnormal coprophagia. Why does my dog eat his poop regularly? To tell the truth, there is no single clearly proven explanation but several possible causes which have been studied. Anyway, the dog does not eat his poo to get your attention, although this false belief is quite widespread. Dietary and digestive causes. Indeed, as mentioned a little above, it is easy to understand that there will be food residues in the poo, if the food is not properly digested. These residues increase the palatability of the droppings which the dog then hastens to eat. The causes considered include intestinal malabsorption. Foods digested in the intestine are not absorbed into the body because it is unable to pass them into the blood. It may be because it is failing or because the elements are still too large to pass the intestinal barrier. The enzyme deficiency. Enzymes allow food to be cut into smaller pieces and then into molecules small enough to pass from the intestine to the blood. The lack of enzymes results in less effective cutting and therefore a defect in absorption, mentioned above. A poorly digestible food. Digestibility of a food is important. If I take 2 types of potatoes, A and B, but potato A is digested at 50% while potato B is digested at 80%, we understand that if my meal consists of 200 grams of one or on the other, I will not absorb the same amount of food. Digesting 200 grams of potatoes A will provide me with 100 grams of food, while 200 grams of potato B will provide me with 160 grams of food. So there are more residues with potato A. It's exactly the same with dog food. If it is not easily digestible, there will be more residues which make the stools more attractive. A problem of overeating. Same principle. If I feed my dog too much and that amount exceeds the ability of the enzymes to cut food, residues will remain in the intestine and make the feces more palatable. Eating too much kibble can cause a dog to eat his poop. Behavioral causes related to learning. The conditions of education, method and places of learning, as well as the way of life of the dog come into play in the following causes. Isolated, stressed and living in too narrow a space, the dog will tend more easily to eat his poop. It is important for the dog to separate space for eating, sleeping, and cleanliness. If the dog is forced to defecate too close to its bowl or bedding, it may have to eat its droppings. Unsanitary breeding conditions with a high concentration of dogs, as can be seen in some kennels, reinforces this behavior. Boredom can also cause the dog to coprophagia. Anxiety and attention seeking towards the master for anxiety. It is a reaction to too harsh punishments when the dog eats its excrement. For attention seeking, it would rather be a dog who understands that when he does this the master is interested in him and therefore repeats the behavior to attract his attention. Is it dangerous when my dog eats poop? If you consider feces only, there is no danger of your dog eating them. I know it's disgusting and he has breath to make a dead man pale, halitosis, afterwards, but that's not what you need to worry about. The main concern is related to what the ingested stools contain. Indeed, there may be bacteria responsible for gastroenteritis, viruses such as the very contagious parvovirus virus, but most often eggs of parasites such as tapeworms or roundworms, which will thus contaminate your dog. It is therefore